Hi, it's What If Wednesday time with Susan Bennett Fisher and Martin Fisher, the co-founders of Body of Nine. What if you understood how to speak your kids' language? What if you understood how to honor who they are?
What if you were able to convince your kids that supporting you and honoring you was equally as important?
That would be cool, huh?
It would be cool. Yes. Happens eventually, but
yeah, it takes a few years.
we don't really want to wait till they're in their 20s to get there.
So, and you might have to, just it's the nature of parenting. So, what we're going to talk about today is how do you talk about Body of Nine to your kids before they know, in order to prepare them to find out their natural number?
To have them actually join with you and perhaps even want, or maybe even let you help them identify their natural number too.
And then once you know, how do you honor them moving forward in the relationship? Allow that relationship to grow in alignment with who they are, not with how you think they want to be,
because
you want them to be.
You might think that you can best bring them up the way that you were brought up, and since they're not like you, they don't have the same natural number that you do. That's actually not accurate.
But ironically, because grandparents sometimes repeat the kids, the way you were brought up by your parents, the things that you rejected, might actually work very well for your kids.
Yes, and that's kind of a little bit hard then to decide, well, what is nature versus nurture? Because your parents' nature is different than your nature, which is different than your children's nature. And the nurture part of that, how they raised you, really, really muddles the water there.
Yes.
Muddies the water.
Just even that sentence was confusing.
Yes.
So let's start at the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning.
The beginning is where you tell somebody about Body of Nine.
What is Body of Nine? We should tell the world about.
Or do we even care if they know what Body of Nine is? Maybe we just say Body of Nine is a company. It's our company.
Yes.
It's the name of our company. It is the name of the system that we use to help people understand who they are, their nature, how their nurture affects their nature, how they use their body. Sometimes we talk about it like you're here on Earth in a space suit, and your space suit is equipped with certain things.
And if you would like, imagine that there is a company that makes spacesuits, and they make 9 different models of spacesuits. And even though the spacesuits still have things to hear with, things to speak with, things to see with, how your particular model is impacted by those is just like depending if you're driving a stick shift or an automatic shift. They both use gears, they both drive down the freeway, but how you have to manage those and what you do to get the best out of them is very, very, very different.
Very different. So using an analogy to describe Body of Nine, or the fact that we have 9 physiologically different kinds of suits here on planet Earth, is one powerful way of putting some context that's understandable by the people that you love around this reality about our human experience.
And what we've done, as humans have done since the beginning of time, is we use some shorthand. That's why we use numbers, because it is easy after you've had some experience with natural numbers and the Body of Nine to say this person has a particular natural number. Because if you were trying to describe that number, and we do in our books, then that natural number description can take many, many, many pages. And
the language is slippery. We've said that many times. Is that the same word means something very different to each natural number, especially those words like intuition and connection and relationship and engagement. They mean something very, very different.
So we've said and continue to believe that people with natural numbers, people in relationship don't share the same natural number. But I could say to one of you, I could say, you have intuition. And your partner would say, but so do I. And that's the problem. You do, they do, but the definition of that intuition is very different. So we don't use words where we can avoid it. Never mind that the language is different: English, French, German, whatever language. So
yes, communication is complicated.
Yes, and the Egyptians knew this, and it's not exactly an unknown thing. The Egyptians were always using symbolism, and a lot of the Egyptian language was done with symbolism when it was written down. But if I say, here's a picture of a bird, that doesn't mean anything unless you're Egyptian. So.
Yeah, and that's a way to talk to a teenager.
Yes.
As you can say, well, there are systems out there in the world that have recognized this, and that we can point to suggest that there's been some knowledge of this in the world. Because one of the things that people, teenagers are inherently skeptical.
And good for them.
Yeah, and they should be. So, in order to help them understand that systems of nine exist in the world at large, and the Egyptians is a very good example of a culture that we believe explored the nature of the nine, both on the physical side as well as the spiritual side.
Many, 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 in fact, pretty much every civilization that we've looked at, if you go back far enough, 5,000, 10,000 years ago, had this awareness. And you can see it in Chinese, Indian, and
Yes, perfect timing.
perfect timing.
Yes.
So we live in a world where people do work, and that's wonderful. So the issue is that we've worked with 7,500 people. We spend a lot of our time looking at the past to see what was known, but we spend more time looking at the future to see how can we change the world. And with your help, we can achieve that. And part of that is talking to your children and understanding, helping them understand who they are and helping you understand who they are. Because as we've said, they're not like you. And they're never going to be exactly like you. And they will share a lot of the nurture. But in terms of the nature, they're very different.
And I think, you know, when you're talking infants, when you're talking really actually younger than probably 8 years old, what you're doing is you're honoring those parts of them that are their nature. So learning about a kid's natural number isn't necessarily at that age about them learning about their natural number. It's about them learning about what's magical about themselves and you supporting that. So when you start out with your kid and you find out from us that your kid is a natural number 7, for example, well, you have to understand how 7s use boundaries or don't use boundaries at all. How do you let your kid run free and explore boundaries and still be safe? So how do you talk to that kid? So you talk to that kid really different than if that kid has natural number 8.
Who is very, very much about boundaries and knows that the human boundary is about out here. And many, many children with natural number 8 feel semi-abused because people get too close to them before they're ready. And if you have a child that really needs people to keep their distance till they're comfortable, that's not a bad thing.
So when you're talking to young kids who really don't have contextual skills yet, you know, the big context of our human life experience,
The ability to glue things together.
then you're supporting them and you're teaching them and you're using the context of their natural number and yours and the relationship of those two to teach them about life in the world.
Because what always happens is that you see the world through your lens, through your natural number, 100%. Mm-hmm. And your children, as we've said, and we'll continue to repeat so that you understand it, not just intellectually but in your body, don't share the same worldview that you do.
Yeah, they're wearing a different suit.
They're wearing a different suit. So what happens is that they'll do something that if you did would mean something. It would mean that they've had a particular experience or they've done something particular for a particular reason. And I will guarantee you that the reason that they did it is not the reason you think it is.
Absolutely. And not only that, if you put your judgment on top of it,
yes,
now you've compounded the problem.
So
that breaks down the communication between you.
Yes, and one of the worst things that you can do for your child is make them wrong for who they are. And that is hard not to do because you're seeing the world through your natural number. So knowing their natural number gives you some help. Certainly with our books and experience with us, gives you some help. How do they see the world? What is important to them? What does it mean when they do something?
And how do you nurture the gifts and the magic that's in your kids without shutting that down?
And how do you not make them wrong for their nature? Now, children misbehave, they push boundaries, it's part of their growth experience. Part of the subtlety here is that you need to know their nature before you can tell, are they being naturally this? Or is this because of some other thing? Is this something in their nurture that they're exploring? So it's a tough role being a parent because it's even tougher if you really don't know why your children are doing things.
Yes. And so those early years, it's not about explaining to them about the system. It's about helping them to be nurtured and grow in a direction that doesn't close down their natural abilities.
A prime example is that some of the natural numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, really build their world and their relationships through eye contact. The rest don't. Now, you may or may not think that eye contact is important. You may have been told, because we've all been told that if we're doing salesy things, we need to make strong eye contact. But that can be confusing. And just because a child is not giving you eye contact doesn't mean they're disrespecting you. And vice versa. If they're giving you eye contact, doesn't mean that they're looking for more than just connection. It's hard being a parent.
Yes. So then the time, I think the most powerful time to introduce the context of Body of Nine is between the ages of 8 and about 14, 15. Though that's when young people have their first awareness of themselves outside of their parental world. So around fourth grade, kids start to wake up and get curious about who they are, how they fit in, and in the fourth, fifth, sixth grades, they're not as worried about fitting in. So you have this unique opportunity to honor who they are in that little window of where they know they're different. They don't understand why people don't understand them, and they don't really understand themselves. So what you give them at that sort of to 8 to 14 range is a context that they can fit themselves in and they can fit their friends in. So when it starts to get challenging in junior high and early years of high school about fitting in, they already know their place. And at least they can be comfortable in themselves and understand when they're moving counter to who they are to fit in or when they're not, and how they bring their gift and how that's appreciated. So you can introduce the context of there are 9 physiologically different kinds of people. We use our senses differently based off of what part of our body is born active.
What we care about, how we process data, what we're good at, and natures are different.
Based off our body.
And funny that. And, children eventually start to figure out, well, some kids are right-handed, some kids are left-handed. My eyes are blue, somebody else's eyes are brown. They have blonde hair, they have dark hair, they're tall, they're short. They enjoy doing different things. And every kid that goes to school knows that there's different groups of people that hang out together. Their friends, almost guaranteed, are mostly not going to be like them. They know that they're different. Why they're different, how they're different, these are the things you can start to explain.
Yes, and also your kids are going to choose friends that are familiar energetically and
Probably.
that aren't. Well, they'll have some of both.
That's
usually,
true, yes.
right?
Yeah.
So we have, and some kids, so the 1, 2, 3s, and 4s, they want to have relationships with all kinds of people. 2 kids, for example, natural number 2s, they know everybody. They know everybody and they have a connection with everybody and they move easily from person to person, but they often think that they're not well liked. So just honoring in your 2 child, for example, that relationships and connections are easy and important for them and that they are indeed well liked is a very important part of supporting them. So with each natural number, you give them the context that that we're each actually quite different in terms of what we care about and what we're good at. So it's about talents, it's about attributes, it's about behavior, it's about skills and gifts, what we're good at. So our natural number shapes those things, shapes our experience, that and our nurture. So how we're supported as children, how we're supported in school. So this is this narrow window from 8 to 14 is a really a powerful time to introduce both the context of the Body of Nine, so where do I fit in, as well as the kind of what your natural number is, to understand who am I at this very deep level.
And it also starts to explain some of the interactions between your children and their friends, the whole ability to fit in, the whole ability to be liked. And the way the world works, natural number 2 is a wonderful example, is they will make friends with everybody. They will find the people that are not necessarily the most conversationally clever or that aren't fitting in.
Doesn't matter.
Aren't really
they find everybody.
But what happened is that once this person has been sort of healed in their minds, they'll go off and make different friends. And so there's a lot of trauma that comes with being a child as well, based on how our natural numbers don't get met. The needs don't get met by their friends because their friends have no idea either. So part of your ability as a parent that understands natural numbers and their child's natural numbers is to help them through the difficult bits by helping them understand it's actually not about them.
Right. Oh, and God, early teen relationships.
Oh, that's...
we are attracted to energies we know, typically.
And at school, there's the whole sort of peer pressure thing, and you're attracted to the people you're supposed to be attracted to, right? The homecoming king or the homecoming queen. If that person doesn't understand your natural number, isn't familiar with that, it doesn't matter how much you want to be with that person, homecoming queen or not, they won't recognize your ability to be with them and connect them. They won't recognize your energy. And understanding that as a child, I think is incredibly powerful. It's hard enough as adults to say, wow, that person didn't like me just because they didn't know who I was, not there's something wrong with me. So helping your child deal with the
Pressures.
the pressures
Of fitting in.
the pressures of school, the pressures of relationships is pivotal. There's so many things. If you look back at your childhood, now you can look back and say, wow, that was a tough time, but I can laugh about it now because I'm out. Or even, wow, that was a tough time. I'm still scarred about what happened.
Well, I remember when I'm a 6, natural number 6. And 6s, we don't use eye contact to create connection. We energetically feel people. And so we know when things are working, when they're not, but we don't necessarily know the whys of it. And we don't necessarily know what to do about how to build a relationship and make it better. So we also tell the truth and move quickly. And so those things often piss people off. So I was an overachiever. I was a good athlete. I identified myself as an athlete. And I remember being jealous of what I used to call the pretty popular girls because and I look back now and they were probably 1, 2, 3s, and 4s because they could build relationship. And it was the one thing I wasn't really very good at. I had a boyfriend at the time who was a 3 and he built the relationship with me. It was fantastic. But at the time I had no idea really how to do that. And so as I grew up and found out about this work, it was like, oh gosh, wow, I could have really benefited in my teen years.
At least it would have helped you understand what was going on.
Yes.
If not change things.
Yes, or, to realize that there's a way to build relationship by making eye contact.
And my natural number's 5, and I was, as you can probably guess, the archetypical nerd. I mean, I was very much aware of what was going on. I found school relatively easy, and I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right things, to be rewarded and respected for that part of my life. But at the same time, the relationships were very superficial. They were about doing things together, playing cards, building opportunities to hang out with other people based on shared experiences, not just because it was fun to hang out. And that, even today, it's easier for me to build a relationship by doing something with someone than it is just hanging out.
Right. You had a adult male 2 friend who said, let's be friends.
Yeah.
And at first you're like, sure, I'd love to be friends. But then you just didn't know how to do it.
Yep. Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't know how to do it by just hanging out. And that's
Right.
what he wanted to do. He just wanted to hang out.
Right.
And you're like, well, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
and that constant misunderstanding.
It carries on through adulthood.
It does.
So
it does. But
the
when
thing
you
about
don't
understanding and having your children's natural number identified and having them understand who they are when they're ready, is that a lot of the trauma that we take with us into adult life is much more easily dissipated much earlier on. One way to look at it is that investing in having your children's natural number identified is going to save you thousands of dollars
Save
therapy
them.
going forward.
So both of you probably. So we're talking about how you talk to. So we're talking to 8 to 14-year-olds. Hey, you're different, and it's okay to be different. In fact, your body is probably the biggest reason why you're different and why you often feel like you don't fit in. In most groups, everybody's different, but the way we interact and build community and participate in community is really different. So you can say that to your kids, and depending on whether they're a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or a 5 through 9, you would talk about how either easy it is for them to build a relationship or hard for them to build a relationship.
Or
But
how.
or maybe they have a friend that is so good at it, or they're not. So just noticing, how does your kid do with building friends? Do they have 2 or 3 or 4 very close friends? Are they the center of the classroom? Are they the jokester, or are they the one that's always getting in trouble for saying outlandish things? Learning about your kid's natural number gives you a context for understanding all of those kinds of things.
And so the ability to say to your child, and I think most parents have said or will say, you don't have to change to fit in. There is an element of, okay, who are you? What is your nature? What is the group's dynamic? And how can you know who you are and fit in with the group without changing the core nature that you are? Because
Right.
nurture versus nature is always going to cause grief.
And that helps them understand their role.
Yes.
What's their role in community? When I was able to embrace my role as a 6 to move energy forward and move groups and people forward, it gave me so much permission to be me. And I think that's another really important thing for teenagers. to understand that it's okay to be the way they are. In fact, it's important.
It's important to be, and it's important for you as a parent to recognize, as we've said repeatedly, that they're different, and that's okay. In fact, it's critical that they're different than you are, because the more that you support and honor their nature, the easier it's going to be. We see, as people grow, the further the nurture is from the nature, the tougher people find it to be. And after adults have had their natural number identified, they start to move back towards from the nature to the nurture. To be honest, most people that we've met, 7,500, have been lucky enough to be doing work and have a life that fits in with the nature. And I think most people generally head to that place. But knowing what is your nature and what is your nurture is going to help you, and hopefully will, and helping your child have that experience, helping them know and connect and hold on to that personal magic. Because otherwise, it's going to be 10, 20 years before they go around in the cycle again, ready to start understanding these things about themselves.
Yes. So if I was going to talk to a 15 to 18-year-old, I might actually talk more about performance and about how about knowing your natural number enhances performance of any kind. Physical, so if they're competing in sports, knowing that where your movement center is very helpful for being faster, stronger, more fit, and understanding how your body works in comparison to other people you're competing against.
What are
your
gifts? What are your strengths? Because each natural number has a set of physical and mental strengths that help them. Some natural numbers actually do better at school than others. It's just an unfortunate reality.
Yeah. And why? The why of it.
Academically, that is, not necessarily in other ways. But academically, certain natural numbers are going to do better than others.
Well, the structure of school supports some of the natural numbers better. 5s usually do very well in school. 6s, 7s, 8s. I mean, it really is for the Transformers. It's much, much harder on the relationship kids in a lot of ways, although it's usually very fun because it's the place where they go and be with people. So different kids look for different things from school, and honoring and supporting what's important to a kid about school is important. Mm-hmm. And that is something, one way of talking about it to your kids is, this part's easy for you, this is challenging for you, and if you want to develop this, here's a way. So you can teach them how to use their bodies to try different things as well. And if you get really advanced as a parent, helping them learn to activate the other centers to balance out their strength is another way to give them a huge gift.
And if you really wanted to get further along, talking to some of the teachers, the gym teachers, for example, the people that are building teams, our experience is, and it's relatively small, is that teams that understand the strengths of everybody on the team and that knows all the natural numbers have a much better and more fun time of things, because the people, the players that have certain attributes get to be in certain places where they can make sense of those strengths.
Yeah, I wonder if, we haven't really looked at this yet, but in basketball, we pass the ball. And I would think that if you pass a basketball on a bounce pass to a 4 or an 8, they would probably handle it way better than a head type. Whereas you could pass right at the head, right at the throat, mm-hmm. where for the odd numbers.
Well, we know that natural number 2s make amazing guards.
Because they can really match and merge with, and 6s can do it because they're anticipating energy. So each of the numbers brings something special and unique, and learning to use your special and unique can really enhance performance.
Yes, so rock climbers, natural number 3s and 7s, as it turns out, because they have this amazing upper body strength.
Yeah, and this ability to focus from this part of the body. The other place is in theater and performance of that nature. Musical performance or acting, understanding your natural number enables you to find that deeper place from where you can express yourself.
And pretend to be other people. Yeah.
Yes, if you want to try to pretend to be another person, if the character is very different than you, you can sort of look at that and say, well, what natural number would that character really be? And how do I embody that so that I can be more like that portrayal of that character?
So the other part of the statement then is that knowing your natural number actually is it's not just passive. There are active things you can do based on knowing your natural number and your children's natural number that can change your life and change the life and the environment of the people around you.
Yes. So when you're first talking about them, say this is, this is the way you show up. It's what's built into your body. It's the unique strengths and abilities that are innate and natural to you.
You know your child better than anybody else, and knowing how to communicate with them this information is going to be unique. What we've tried to do is give you some rough guidelines, the things that we've seen that work, and ways that we've talked to our children have known the natural number for getting on for 15, 16 years now.
20
years. So, and we believe it's made a huge difference to their growth and help them get through school without hopefully, touch wood, a lot of the trauma that many other children have had.
Yes, or to recover from the trauma that they have experienced. Trauma recovery is aided by this, by knowing who you are and understanding how that trauma has influenced your core gifts and skills. So if your kids have been traumatized, this is actually a very helpful information for them about how getting back to trusting themselves.
Yeah, the therapists and counselors and psychiatrists that we know that actually use this information find it to be very useful.
So many ways to talk about this work. The way you understand it and what's true for you is probably the most powerful way.
Why did you think it was important for you? And why do you think it's important for your children to learn about you? Because as children get older, it becomes very much a two-way dynamic.
It does. And those classic conflicts where you always butt heads with your kid, they get explained by this.
And once they're explained, you can let them go.
Yes, you can stop judging your kid for their bad behavior and let them be who they are, and in fact encourage those behaviors that are really innate in who they are.
I don't think there's anyone that would look back and say, I wish my parents honored me less, because everybody, I think, wishes to be honored. And being acknowledged for who we are, and being honored for who we are, and being loved for who we are, that's a gift that is amazing to be able to give to your children and your partner.
And I think most parents really want to give that to their kids, and this is a way to make that easier. So I hope that this has been helpful for you to understand different ways to talk about Body of Nine, or the natural numbers, or the fact that we're wearing different bodysuits here in this world, and that there are 9 kinds that have 9 manifestations, 9 ways of being, 9 skills, 9 talents, 9, whatever the words are for you. So at this point, I think we can say goodbye for this week, and we'll look forward to talking with you again next week.
Wish you a happy week, and we'll see you soon.